Hello, everyone, and it's great to have you back in this new year, 2021. I'm Ballin with Bill. Thank you, Sideline Power, for all the work you do for Ballin with Bill and Powered Up Clinics. I have a fine gentleman here today. I've known him a while. Got to know him back when he was an assistant at Omaha West Side, offensive coordinator, who won the state championship this year. Let's give him a little bit of good stuff there. But Ryan was the offensive coordinator. I recruited his quarterback, and he came and he played for me at Dana, Marcus Slodick, excuse me, and was second team all conference quarterback, threw for a lot of yards for me and broke some records before they closed Dana. Anyway, but Ryan Gottula from Lincoln Southeast, it's great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Bill. Appreciate it.
Appreciate your time you taking away from school and coming up here today and visiting with us, and just kind of like to get started here. I know you were a football player, so kind of talk how you got started in football as a young man when you were a little guy and all that stuff, and how you kind of grew up there.
Yeah, I guess kind of a unique situation in that I grew up in small town Nebraska. Two older brothers, three older sisters, and so sports were a big part of what we did in our family. Education was really important. My dad was a school board president, and so we were always around school and sports. But I played 8-man football in high school, played basketball, competed in track and field, and so been around sports for a really long time, and then attended the University of Nebraska, Omaha. And I guess when I really got into coaching, I was one of those kids that, kind of changed my mind a lot in college as far as my majors, what I was going to do.
For me, I changed.
I was a biology major. I was set up. I was going to go to law school, and I just really felt like I was going to miss sports too much and being around athletics and education. And so I got my teaching degree and really got into coaching in the fall of 1999. I did my student teaching at Ralston High School, and really got an opportunity to work with Tyler Zahn. He was the head coach there at that time, and really
he's at West Side now too.
He is.
Yeah.
He is.
Go ahead. I didn't interrupt you, but I know Tyler.
Coach Zahn, great guy, got me into coaching, and from there I went to Omaha West Side. That's where I had my first teaching job, and got an opportunity to volunteer on the reserve team. Coach Morrissey was the head coach, and that was in 2000. And then 2003, Coach Marty Kaufman became the head coach, and fortunately I got a chance to work with quarterbacks and the offense for a number of years there at West Side. A lot of great memories as far as guys I coached with and players, and then went to Southeast in 2009, and have been at Southeast since then. So
good.
Great experiences.
Well, you've been at some good campuses. When you talk Ralston, West Side, and Lincoln Southeast, a lot of history in football in the state of Nebraska for those schools and stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of cool where you started and got involved. So when you first look back at, because you were under some interesting people there with Zahn and Kaufman. I remember. Okay, tell you how I know Marty. When I was a senior in high school, he was over there at Rockbrook Junior High. It was Rockbrook back then, I think.
Sure.
And because I had Harbor Heights, Westbrook, and because at that time Westside was the largest school in the state. We had like almost 3,000 students at our school at that time. And he'd come over there practice, and I learned a lot of big guys wrestle, so I always wrestled Marty. Because he was the next heavyweight wrestler.
How'd that go?
He was heavy. Back then I was only 210. And he was good. He was just like he is now, about 270, 280. And that sucker get on top of me, boy. But it got me used, because back then there was no weight class for heavyweight. It was 185 and then unlimited. So most of the guys I wrestled, were Marty's size. So it helped me get used to him. It helped a ton, because I ended up getting third state my senior year. So he did a lot of good work for me and helped me use my quickness and brains instead of, because that was tough when they get on top of you. You got to get out of there quick before they grab that leg and hammer you down. So, but he was a good man. I've known Marty a long time. Then him and Bob worked together at Rockbrook. He was Bob was his defensive coordinator back when Bob was still finishing up high school senior year. So we've known Marty a long time. And you start with him, and then Marty, and then Tyler Zahn. I've known Tyler. He was a very good football player at Lincoln, and then you were under some interesting people at Lincoln Southeast. How did that form your coaching mantra? What you like to do? How you handle kids, all that type of thing, how you build them up, how'd that affect you learning from some good people like that?
Yeah, well, had some great mentors, obviously, when you bring up those names that you mentioned. Obviously, like I said, Coach Zahn really kind of got me into the coaching and got me really interested in it. Coach Morsey and Coach Kaufman, obviously at Westside, I think they were both similar in that they really let you do your job as a coach, and that's something I always try to do now as a head coach. Is I know Coach Kaufman was big on making sure you get good people in your organization, and then let them do the job that you put them in there to do. And so a lot of wonderful things that I learned from him and Coach Morsey at Westside, and like I said, got to coach with some really good and talented assistants there as well. And then at Southeast, got an opportunity to follow two guys that are really, they're both in the Southeast Athletic Hall of Fame, and Coach Larson and Coach Mazursky.
Mazurski's in the Nebraska Hall of Fame too, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I've had some tremendous mentors and got to work with a lot of great assistant coaches as well that have really helped shape me as a coach and helped me out along the way.
Awesome. So what when you took over it, because you were there as assistant, how did you change things when you first took over at Southeast?
Well, obviously following two very talented coaches, there were a lot of great things already in our program, and so wanted to make sure we carried on some of the traditions as far as just how we play the game at Southeast and how we compete and the emphasis on multi-sport athletes. I think that's something that Southeast has done a great job of throughout the years, is having a lot of great multi-sport athletes. So wanted to continue with that. At the same time, also really wanted to be myself. I think kids are going to see through that. If you're trying to be something you're not. So I wanted to be myself as a head coach, and really I think kind of a big thing I want to make sure to always emphasize to our staff and to our players is really what our mission is all about. And we want to compete for championships on the field and have really high expectations for what we want to do on the field, but we also know that we want our kids to have success in the classroom and have success at home and in the community and really in life after football. And so to me, that's something I learned from other head coaches that I had an opportunity to work for, is making sure you focus on the big picture things as well as a high school coach.
That's awesome. No, I when I met you earlier, we traveled that one day to go to Holdridge, Nebraska.
Yeah.
Through you and Artie and and I remember that day we talked a lot of different philosophies and ball and everything, and we all spoke at that clinic. But yeah, I always thought I knew you'd be a good head coach when you got that opportunity, because I could see that in you. Visiting that day in the car, so that was kind of cool.
Appreciate that.
You betcha, Coach. I was glad to see when you got the Southeast job, because that's a good program, and I figured it shows that you've done a good job there, because you've been there now, like we said, about 12, 13 years, been 10 as a head coach, right?
Yes.
That's awesome. That's great. That says a lot for what you've done there and how you've worked with those kids and that program and the parents and all that stuff. That's a lot of credit to you.
Yeah, and we've had great parental support as well. So it's I love it at Southeast. It's a great situation for me and my family.
That's good. How old are your kids now?
I have one son. He is 16, so he plays for our program now.
Really?
So
What position does he play?
He's an offensive tackle.
Oh, he's a big boy.
He is. A lot bigger than Dad. So, yeah, that's been unique. The last couple years is having my son in our program, but I don't coach his position, and so it's fun. But he may not say it's fun, because he takes the brunt of it sometimes when I'm upset at practice. But it's unique and it's fun.
Oh, good. That's neat. So now, I've known you as an offensive guy, which I know you are, and so how have you? I remember what you ran at Westside, and you're very successful running it there, and it's been very successful for you. How you have adapted with your players and offensive philosophy and everything like that. How you started when you started at Westside, and how has it progressed now at Lincoln Southeast?
Sure. Well, we're pretty multiple in what we do. We are a no huddle offense, but we're pretty multiple in that we may be an empty in certain situations, and but there's been games where we're two tight ends and two backs, which is I guess pretty unique nowadays. And so we're kind of multiple in what we do. We've just always believed in making sure that we fit what we're doing year in and year out to our personnel, and making sure that we put our kids in a situation to be successful. And so offensively we really try to make sure that we are complementary of our defense. We don't want to put our defense in a bad situation by going out there and not running any time off the clock and going 3 and out and having the defense on the field the whole game. And so I guess we're a little different in that regard, in that we'll still run some old school football, but we also want to make sure that we have an identity, and really our identity has always been that, you know, we want to run the football,
right.
and defensively we want to stop the run, and we want to play good special teams and play smart football, and I think that puts you in a position to win a lot of games.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know. You've been. I mean, you've always been dynamic, because I've seen you do some really neat things in your career as an offensive coordinator and head coach with what you've done offense. You run the ball, but you do some nice things with the passing game too, and I've always noticed that too, watching you.
Yeah,
you've
like
mixed
I said,
them well together.
we
But
try to be
you throw the well. You've always thrown the ball well.
Yeah, I think, you know, we've done a pretty good job of having that identity of being able to run the ball, yet having some good passing concepts that high school kids can understand and execute. You know, we don't have as much time with them as, you know, they do at the college and professional level, but we want to make sure that, you know, we have concepts that are sound and our kids can execute. So.
Right. And I've always been very impressed with what you've done, Coach.
Appreciate it.
So now, you know, when you look at your history, what do you do defensively different now that you see now that when you're starting stuff, now that you're head coach, and when you first became head coach, and now that you progressed to 10 years as a head coach, what have you done differently with your players, and what do you do scheme wise and stuff like that?
Yeah, defensively we're a 4-man front, which also I guess is a little different nowadays. There's a lot of teams that are running the 3-man front, but you know, the 4-man front it just works for us. It fits our personnel really well, and like I said, we've always been a program that we believe you got to be able to run the ball and stop the run, and so you know that's kind of the scheme that we've used throughout my time as a head coach. And I guess the other big thing to us defensively is we want to make sure we have our best athletes on the field defensively, and so in the off season, you know, as a staff, we're going to sit down and take a look at, you know, the athletes we're going to have on that team and make sure that we have our best athletes on the field defensively. And we're going to play with great technique. That's the other thing. I know sometimes as coaches we like to spend a lot of time on the schemes and the X's and O's, but we want to make sure that our kids learn great technique and that they're taught that from the day they walk into our program as freshmen. And like I said, I think if you stop the run and you play with great technique and get to the ball, you got a chance to have a lot of success on defense, and we have a great defensive staff. Our coaches do a tremendous job on that side of the ball, and so it's made us obviously really competitive and had a lot of success the last few years.
Yeah, what do you? Now I know because the game has changed on defense because of the rules and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. What do you do different in tackling now that you did when you're at Westside? Let's say for an example, as far as practice and how do you handle the teaching and tackling now? Because it's changed a lot.
It has.
Since you're at Westside, when I'm talking at Westside, it's changed a lot.
When I was at Westside, I didn't coach really much on the defensive side of the ball. I did when I was younger, but didn't coach a lot on that side of the ball. But nowadays, you know, our big emphasis is on the safety of the game. You know, the game has moved in that direction for good reasons, and so we want to make sure that our kids are obviously, like I said, playing with great technique and doing things the right way, you know, from a tackling perspective, from a blocking perspective. And so it certainly has changed, but like I said, our defensive coaches do a great job of teaching that from the day our kids come into our program. So we've had a lot of success in that regard.
How have you adapted defensively to different formations that you see nowadays in the no-huddle? I mean, the more wide open the game has become, even the state of Nebraska has changed quite a bit. How's that changed you as far as being the 4-man front, coverage-wise and everything?
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. You know, for us, we've had to maybe do a little more as far as, you know, turning over some of the responsibilities to the kids on the field, as far as some checks that we may have in place, so that they're able to check in and out of things based on what we're seeing from a formation perspective. Because, like you said, with no-huddle offenses today, it takes some of that coaching from the sideline, and you have to have guys on the field that really understand the game. We've been fortunate in that we've had some great guys at the safety position that have been kind of like coaches on the field for us, and that they understand the game and they're able to make those checks on the field quicker than maybe that call can get in from the sideline. So that, I think that's maybe the biggest difference I see on that side of the ball is you want to make sure that you essentially have a coach on the field at a couple different positions to get you into the right things you want to do defensively.
Well, I think so, Coach, so much because, Ryan, I mean, that's the biggest thing I've seen the change in my mind. Is the tackling technique has changed a lot, and it has to because of protection of the kids and the athletes. But I think the game has also changed a lot because of the so many formations, and they're trying to hustle you. They're really, when you watch them, I mean, the whole key of the no huddle, which you run it too, is to try to get that play off where that defense can get set if you can do it.
Exactly.
If they're bringing players, because they get tired, they're trying to bring players in and out. So your kids on the field have to be much more intelligent, I think, and understand the game and formations and with the the boundaries and all the things that you didn't have to do because the coaches all did it when I coached.
I agree, and I think huddle has changed that a little bit too, as far as kids being able to watch film.
That's a good
faster, and learn more about the game. Just makes it easier. I mean. When I started as a student teacher, that was part of my job was to drive film and trade with the next opponent.
Anybody's coached long enough,
anymore.
I've done that too, man.
You don't spend that time driving and trading film anymore. You get to actually watch the film now. So that's been a big change as well.
Yeah, I remember when I started coaching, we'd had to make cut-ups before we started camp. I was at GA, or Sandy there, and I remember back then we were 16 millimeter film. I don't know if you remember that, if that's even before your time, but we used to have to put it up around task, all the different plays, and then we'd splice them together. So when the players come into camp, we could watch that play over and over again. And it'd break during the thing because it wasn't like we were so happy when they finally went to VHS and all that stuff, and we could do everything with the multi-deck and all that stuff. But
sure,
I go back to when I first started. We were doing 16 mil. We were trading 16 millimeter film, all them gold cans. So it's
I didn't do that. I didn't do that.
You at least had the VHS.
Yeah, I started with VHS, and then the DVDs and. It's just you really save coaches a lot of time and
always had a meeting place to go to where you'd hook up and have a cup of coffee and trade film, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Remember those days? That huddle's changed all that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, and like I said, kids just have more access to it now and are able to learn more about the game through that.
Well, I think that's that's a good thing I was going to ask you. And okay, kids are smarter because you have more opportunity to learn the game than you did when I played or you played or even when you first started coaching. How do you keep their their mind thinking and going with all because coaching a kid today I think is much different than coaching when I was even at Dan and you were at Westside is because they are so more intellectual. How do you keep that mind always learning and stuff like that? What do you do different as coaches now?
I think we've really benefited from our off season. Our summers are really important to us. We have a lot of players in our program that are multi-sport guys, so we don't get a ton of time with them in the winter and spring because they're just doing other sports and other things. Mm-hmm. But our summers are really important to us, in that we're able to take that and use it as a teaching tool. We'll do some 7-on-7s as far as with our quarterbacks, but I think it's just easier to teach them nowadays as far as quarterbacks' ability to understand coverages and passing game concepts that you want to use. And so certainly I think it's a little easier to teach kids nowadays just because of the amount of time or I guess you're able to get more done in a shorter amount of time, which is good when you have multi-sport kids.
Yeah. How long do you go in practice? We were always a big 2-hour team. I remember when I played for Sandy, we were 3 hour out there in practice. But I mean, what do you do different time-wise as far as practice? Are you guys staying at 2 hours still, or do you do a shorter time, or what do you guys do now?
Yeah, our practices usually are not much over 2 hours,
so
maybe just over 2 hours. I don't think you accomplish much if you go much longer than that, to be quite honest with you. I just not to knock anything that anybody's done in the past, but I just think that we want to make sure that we're efficient in what we do. We want our practice to move at a quick pace. I think really a lot of conditioning you can get done in the way that you practice.
I agree.
We still, we'll condition, we'll run sprints as I'm sure every football team does, but I think the pace at which you move your practice helps a lot with that conditioning. And so as far as the time we spend at practice, it's usually around that 2 hours or just over it. And we've got the last few years, we've had more kids that have played more on one side of the ball, and so we're able to get more done in that time frame, and so that we don't have to spend much more than that in a practice.
Okay. Now, how do you do your weight now? Because you're big multiple sport, which I think is great. I think it's great for high school kids to do multiple. I did well, I did track there for a little while at the store, but I mainly concentrated on two sports, football and wrestling when I was at West Side. But I think that's the best thing. That's a great learning for how do you mix the conditioning, and not so much conditioning because they are doing that in their sport, but lifting so they continue to gain strength in the off season before they get back with you in the fall.
Yeah, a lot of our guys are in a weight training class during their school day,
okay.
so they're able to get that in during their school day.
Okay.
We have some that are not because of the classes that they're in, and so we'll certainly have workouts after school for those guys. But I think a big thing that's changed is I think early on as a coach, kind of the head coach and the assistants were all kind of in charge of that as far as the setting up and implementation of that program. We have been fortunate the last 4 or 5 years we've had a strength coach
That
now,
helps tremendously.
and that's been awesome because he does a tremendous job. That's his area of expertise as far as putting that program together, as far as the strength part, but also just the movements and the speed work and agility work. And it's really taken some time away from our coaches so that our coaches, they're still there with the athletes, but they're there as coaches, and he's the one that's implementing what's going to actually happen there. And so that's been really huge for our program the last few years, is having that strength coach.
As far as weight training, what's changed for you guys in the last 10 years? As far as strength training, running, what do you guys do different now that you did 8, 9, 10 years ago?
I think we emphasize movements a lot more. I'm a big weight room guy. I think that, obviously that's where you're going to build the strength. You
Right.
need to be successful on the field, but also I think you build a lot of other things in the weight room just as far as physical and mental toughness and,
Right.
and making sure kids, I think, sometimes a game is a little easier when you're put through a hard workout in a weight room. And so I think maybe in the last few years we've just emphasized movements a little more and not so much how much you're lifting, but how well are you lifting it and moving the weight. And so, like I said, that's a credit to our strength coach, Matt Birch. He's done a fantastic job in that regard. And the other big thing that I think we've done that's been a little different the last few years is the kids coming into our program as freshmen. As they come into our program that summer before their freshman year, they have a distinct time slot just for them, for their workouts.
That's a good idea.
Which I think is really important because coaches are able to spend more time with them one-on-one to make sure that they really understand what they're doing it safely, and they're learning the correct technique of all the lifts that we're doing.
Do you have many freshmen that now help contribute in your varsity in that freshman years? I know a lot of coaches that's happened a lot more nowadays.
Yeah, we'll have a few. I think the big thing with us is we don't want to put a freshman in a situation where they're not ready for.
Right, I agree.
So we'll have some freshmen that we typically will start them out with our freshman team, and then as they progress through that season, if they show that they're ready to move on and play at a higher level, we're certainly going to give them the opportunity to do that. But we also want to make sure that we put them in a good situation and don't throw them into something that they're not ready for, because I think you can lose a player if you put them into that situation before they're quite ready.
Yeah. Now, on the lifting part, do you guys still do the squat and the main core lifts, or what? Have you adjusted that all?
We do. That really hasn't changed that much.
Yeah,
we're
still
squats,
the same.
Cleans, yeah. So
Good. I didn't want to see you get away from the good stuff. It makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree with you, Bill.
No, you've been a very successful. So, how do you feel about how everything went this year for you? Because I know you were under a lot more demands this year than you've ever been as a head coach, and so much other stuff going. You couldn't have your fans or parents. Well, parents could come to the game, but a lot of your fans that normally come to the game, and students had to be regulated a little bit. So, how did you handle that all this year, Coach?
Yeah, it was different. I thought really our kids handled it really well.
That's
I think
good.
Our administration, our strength coach, they all did a wonderful job last summer of kind of setting the expectations of the importance of the protocols and how we were going to follow those. And so by the time we got to August and we were starting practice, the kids really understood, kind of the protocols that were being put in place and why they were being put in place. And so, our kids handled it really well. And like I said, I think that was a credit to how it was set up throughout the summer. But it certainly was different. But we understand the importance of that, and we're really appreciative of the opportunity that we got to play our season. So
I know, and I was so glad to see you guys play too. Did you have to miss any games this year at all, or were you able to get everyone on time and everything?
We just had one that we were not able to get in, but
That's not
otherwise,
bad.
it went really well. And like I said, I'm really happy to see that for our seniors, that they got to have a senior season and
I couldn't imagine
get
being
the
a senior
film
not
that they
being able to
needed
play and
have,
do anything.
and
Oh my
that,
God!
just that experience of playing the game. So
Because your seniors, when I look back to my high school, and I'm sure you and all your coaches, you look back to your high school. I mean, my goodness. I mean, that's your senior year. You may never. I mean, some go on to play college, some don't. Most of them don't. But
yeah,
that's your senior year with all your friends, your buddies you grew up with, and last 4 years. So when those kids in schools that didn't get a play, I really felt for those kids.
right. Yeah.
I'm glad you guys got. I think Bellevue West only got like 6. I think they had like 3 or 4 that missed, but you were able to get every one but one.
Yeah, we were able to get in 9 games.
That's
7
dang
regular
good.
season, and then a couple in the playoffs.
Who'd you play in the playoffs this year? I'm trying to remember.
We played Columbus. We had a first round bye, and then we played Columbus, and then we played Elkhorn South.
They had a good run, didn't they, this year? Yeah, they did a nice job.
Excellent football team. A lot
Yeah.
of great players, great coaching staff. So, and we lost to them in our last playoff game.
You had a very successful season. So now that I look at your career, okay, and I've watched a lot of things that you've done, and been impressed with it. What do you think you've learned about yourself and your coaching abilities all these years? Because it changes. Because I look back when I coach, I always evaluated myself and my assistants. We kind of evaluated each other, and not only the plays, but how we're coaching, working with kids, and how kids are changed. Because I mean, the longer you coach, the more kids I think change. And I look back. One of my heroes of coaching was Don Shula. Because you look back at him, I mean, he started coaching in the '60s as a young man, then coached all the way to Marino, and had to change his style of game and think depending on the players he had. And his philosophies changed through those years. And I think that's why he was so successful for so long. Because you look from the '60s to the '90s, he's one of the top coaches in the NFL. Why? Because he, I think, adapted well to the kids and, the players, the men. So what have you done? How do you look at yourself and everything like that now that because you've been in a while now, you've done a good job, and how have you adjusted?
Yeah, I think what you said there is pretty key. I think you have to be able to adapt. If you're going to do the same thing year after year after year, things are going to catch up with you. So as a coach, you got to be able to adapt and adjust. I think at the high school level, really adjust to your players. I think that's really important. And I think as you get older, you start to see the big picture things a little more. When you're a younger coach, we're all really competitive. That's probably why we're in coaching.
Yeah.
And so that competitiveness is a big part of maybe why you get into it when you're younger. And certainly, as I get older, I'm still extremely competitive. I want to do well.
I don't think that ever leaves, Coach.
But at the same time, you also start to see the big picture thing and what you're really there for, and helping those kids at that point in their life. So that's really important as well.
Yeah, I think as you get older, you look at things different, and you look what fits your kids. When you're, like you said, when you first start as a coach, you just want to win. Yeah. Just like old Al Davis said, just win, baby. And I think that's hard to get away from when you first start. But when you get older and you're around the kids and you adapt, I'm sure you've had coaches come and go to head coach, so you've had to change and adapt. And adapt and overcomes what I always said, and I think that's what makes, when I see a coach that's been in it as long as you have and has done as well as you have, that's one of the things I think they learn to do, is they learn to adapt and overcome and adjust with the times. And I give credit to you guys that can do that, because it's not easy. That's not easy to change your ways when you first start. We all have our, we try to do it in those silos. So.
Agree. Yeah, you're making me feel old though now.
No, you're not old. Heck, if you want to look at old, come across the street with me, brother. No, I'm impressed. I'm so glad you could come on today and had time to visit with us and everything, because I wanted to get you over here, because I consider you, if not one of the top coaches in the Lincoln area, and you've been very successful. And Lincoln Southeast has been a very successful program through its history.
Absolutely, appreciate it.
And do you have any things you want to say before we close out the show, the old wrestling style?
I don't think so.
You ready to do a headlock and take down and drop down and drop kick?
I'm ready.
Hey, I appreciate everybody that joined in today. This is our start of our winter year. It's great to have Coach Gottula on. Known Ryan a long time, and I think the world of him. But I want you guys to tune in. We have some surprises coming up, have some good things going on. So tune in here to Ballin with Bill, and thanks, Coach Gottula. It's great to have you.
Thanks again. Appreciate it.
You know how to do the finish? Do you know how to do the finish, brother? You got it? He's got it, man. Hush, 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 hush. Thanks, Coacher.